Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Imagine this. You reliving in a world where a king thousands of miles across an ocean dictates your taxes, your laws, and your future. You have no say, no representation, just orders to follow. What would you do? Would you accept it, or would you fight for the right to control your own destiny? Well, 2.5 centuries ago, that wasn't a hypothetical question. It was the reality for the American colonists, and their answer ignited a revolution that would change the world forever. Today, we're diving deep into the epic story of the American War of Independence. This isn't just a tale of old battles and men in wigs. It's the fiery birth of the United States of America. So, how did it all start? The year is 1763. Britain has just won the 7 Years' War against France, a massive global conflict. They're victorious, but they're also deeply in debt. Looking at their prosperous American colonies, the British government saw a solution. They began imposing a series of taxes to raise revenue. First came the Sugar Act, then the Stamp Act of 1765, which taxed everything from legal documents to playing cards. Now, the colonists weren't just upset about paying a bit extra. The real issue was the principle behind it. They were being taxed by a parliament in London where they had no elected representatives. This gave rise to the rallying cry that echoed through the 13 colonies. No taxation without representation. The colonists didn't just grumble, they organized. They boycotted British goods, which hit British merchants right where it hurt their wallets. Secret societies, like the Sons of Liberty, formed, led by passionate figures like Samuel Adams. Tensions escalated. In 1770, a street brawl between colonists and British soldiers in Boston turned deadly. The event, dubbed the Boston Massacre, was sensationalized by patriots like Paul Revere, fueling anti-British sentiment. Then, in 1773, came the Tea Act. To protest, a group of colonists disguised as Native Americans boarded British ships in Boston Harbor and dumped an entire shipment of tea into the water, the famous Boston Tea Party. Britain's response was swift and harsh. They passed a series of laws the colonists called the Intolerable Acts. These acts closed the port of Boston, stripped Massachusetts of its self-governance, and forced colonists to house British soldiers. This was the final straw. Instead of crushing the rebellion, these punitive measures united the colonies in opposition. In 1774, delegates from 12 of the 13 colonies convened in Philadelphia for the First Continental Congress. They weren't calling for independence just yet, but they demanded a repeal of the Intolerable Acts and affirmed their rights as Englishmen. King George III and Parliament refused to back down. The stage was set for war. The first shots rang out on April 19, 1775. British troops marched from Boston to Concord, Massachusetts, to seize a cache of colonial arms. They were met at Lexington by a small group of local militiamen. Someone fired a shot. To this day, no one knows who aimed. The shot heard round the world officially began the American War of Independence. As the British retreated to Boston, they were ambushed and harassed the entire way by colonial minutemen firing from behind trees and stone walls. The war had begun, not with a formal declaration, but with the spontaneous uprising of a people determined to defend their rights. Soon after, the Second Continental Congress gathered and took the monumental step of forming the Continental Army, appointing a Virginian planter with military experience as its commander-in-chief, George Washington. Washington faced an almost impossible task. His army was a ragtag collection of farmers and merchants, poorly trained, poorly equipped, and constantly short on supplies. They were up against the most powerful military machine on the planet. The early years of the war were incredibly difficult for the Americans, marked by a series of defeats and strategic retreats. After being forced out of New York in 1776, the Continental Army's morale was at rock bottom. But in the darkest of hours, a spark of hope was ignited. While the army struggled, the political tide was turning. Influenced by Thomas Paine's powerful pamphlet, Common Sense, which argued passionately for a complete break from Britain, the sentiment for independence surged. On July 4, 1776, the Continental Congress adopted a document that would become one of the most important in human history, the Declaration of Independence. Penned primarily by Thomas Jefferson, it declared that the 13 colonies were now free and independent states. It proclaimed that all men are created equal and endowed with certain unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This wasn't just a declaration of war, it was a declaration of ideals, a mission statement for a new kind of nation. Armed with this new purpose, Washington knew he needed a victory to boost morale. On a freezing Christmas night in 1776, he led his men on a daring and dangerous crossing of the icy Delaware River. They surprised and defeated a garrison of Hessian mercenaries at the Battle of Trenton. It was a small victory in military terms, but its psychological impact was immense. It showed that the Continental Army could win, and that the cause was not lost. The turning point of the entire war came in 1777 at the Battle of Saratoga in upstate New York. A large British army, attempting to split the colonies in two, was surrounded and forced to surrender to American forces led by General Horatio Gates. This stunning American victory did more than just stop a major British offensive. It convinced France that the Americans had a real chance of winning. Eager for revenge against their old rival, Britain, the French officially entered the war as an ally of the United States. French money, ships, and soldiers would prove absolutely crucial to the American effort. Even with a powerful ally, the path to victory was still brutal. The winter of 1777 to 1778, at Valley Forge, was a testament to the incredible hardship endured by the Continental Army. Soldiers suffered from starvation, disease, and the freezing cold. Yet, they persevered. Under the guidance of a Prussian officer, Baron von Steuben, the army used that terrible winter to train and transform into a more disciplined and professional fighting force. The war then shifted south. The British believed they had more loyalist support there and launched a southern strategy. They captured major cities like Savannah and Charleston, and for a time, it seemed to be working. But American guerrilla tactics, led by commanders like Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, wore down the British forces. The war in the South became a bloody, brutal affair. Finally, in 1781, the decisive moment arrived. The main British army in the South, under the command of Lord Cornwallis, marched into Virginia and fortified themselves at a port town called Yorktown, expecting to be resupplied by the British Navy. But it was a trap. Washington, in a brilliant strategic move, marched his American and French forces south to surround Yorktown by land. At the same time, the French fleet sailed into the Chesapeake Bay, defeating the British Navy and cutting off Cornwallis's escape route. Surrounded on all sides, with no hope of reinforcement, Cornwallis was forced to surrender his entire army on October 19, 1781. The surrender at Yorktown effectively ended the war. While some minor fighting continued, the British Parliament, facing a costly war with no end in sight, voted to cease offensive operations in America. Peace negotiations began in Paris. 2 years later, in 1783, the Treaty of Paris was signed. Britain formally recognized the independence of the United States, granting it vast territories, stretching all the way to the Mississippi River. The American War of Independence was over. The cost was high, but the result was the birth of a new nation, founded on the radical idea that a government's power comes from the consent of the governed. The story of this revolution, from the fiery protests over taxes to the final surrender at Yorktown, is a powerful reminder that ordinary people, driven by a desire for liberty and self-determination, can achieve extraordinary things. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through American history. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. We'll see you next time.